what can we do to really make this easier on everybody? And that was, ease and efficiency. When you're looking at salespeople, at the end of the day, they want to close the sale. And so anything that you can do to help a salesperson make that journey simpler and make the story that they're trying to communicate to their client more valuable is going to be a win, and it's going to improve that relationship.
Hello, welcome to the award-winning Healthtech Marketing Show. If you're new here, I'm Adam Turinas. I'm the CEO of Health Launchpad, and this show is dedicated to helping health tech marketers grow pipeline, build marketing that actually moves the needle. We have over 130 episodes in the library, so if this is your first time, there's a lot to dig into, and please follow and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up. And a huge thank you to our longtime syndication partner, Healthcare Now Radio. They are the 24/7 healthcare-only radio network. They also have a podcast syndication platform that's done wonders for our show. And so if you're looking to boost your podcast, or just looking for kind of advice on how to use audio and video as well, give Roberta and Carol, reach out to them at Healthcare Now Radio. Really worth your time. They're absolutely great. Now, today's guest has one of the more unconventional paths into health tech, and you're going to hear that in a second. So Jennifer Lazarz is the Director of Marketing at Medical Informatics Corp. They are the company behind the SickBay Clinical Platform, which is a vendor-neutral software that brings together time-synchronized signals from bedside devices. And this gives clinicians a comprehensive native resolution view of patient data. And this includes things like waveforms from anywhere. So really cool stuff. In this conversation, Jennifer walks me through how her team went from siloed content and frustrated salespeople to a three-pronged AI infrastructure that is transforming the way marketing and sales work together. And they've done that in just 7 months. So we're going to get into how they trained the LLMs, how they're building document libraries in NotebookLM, how they're putting FDA compliance guardrails in place so that the content that's being generated is compliant. And she also gives us this really cool use case of how they connect ChatGPT and Gamma to create really great slides and presentations. So with that, let's get into it and meet Jennifer. Jennifer, welcome to the show. So great to catch up with you.
Thank
now,
you.
Before we get into today's story, tell us a bit about yourself. You've got a journey which is a little unusual.
Yeah, I'm an unconventional marketer. I've been in healthcare tech marketing for about 4 years, but prior to that, I have such a career as being a professional opera singer, ran a ballroom dance school as a business manager, and a historic theater. And was the tourism director. So I got more into marketing many years ago, but very passionate about people across all those careers.
Right. That's humans. That's the thing that ties it all together.
Exactly.
Yeah, too funny. Well, that's extraordinary. That's great. So today's topic is AI and sales enablement. Now, sales enablement is one of those things where you ask 20 people for a definition of sales enablement, you'll get kind of variation, 20 different variations on a theme. So when you talk about sales enablement, what do you mean by that?
The thing that I mean when I talk about sales enablement is the best. I love analogies. We're all rowing on the same direction, right? And so,
we hope so.
I was just on a vacation, took a plane, and when you're waiting in line, you're all going to end up in the same direction when you're boarding that plane, right? So from a sales enablement standpoint, as a marketer, I'm going to be getting on that same plane as the salespeople to get to the same end goal. So it's, what are we doing together? Are we flying the plane? Are we building the plane? Are we, we're still going to all be part of that same plane. So it's looking at what are the tools, what are the processes, what are the relationships that are helping us all be successful together to get that plane to where it needs to go.
I like that. That's a very nice metaphor. Honestly, I was thought you were going to go with choir or something more musical, but actually, that's frankly, a much better
Hey,
definition.
I'm Robert Diva. Okay, so the choir analogy, I have to be in
Yeah.
front of that choir.
No, you want a diva-free experience, but I like the plane analogy, particularly because it is very process oriented in terms of getting people on and off the planes, etc. So, as a marketer, what's your role in it? What are the deliverables? What are the activities that you do?
In terms of being a marketer, there's quite a few things that overlap with what sales is doing. Straightforward, we on top of the funnel. So if I'm not helping generate part of that pipeline in terms of, lead generation, brand awareness, relationship building, then it kind of things are going to fall flat as it is. So there's that. There's the content strategy, the production, all that. But in terms of that direct relationship to them, it's looking at how we're nurturing that pipeline differently and ensuring that whatever is being built by me and my department and how I'm representing that company is going to support and help them move forward with what they're doing.
Yeah. So, where does the responsibility change? What does it lie between what's marketing's responsibility in your organizations, and where does sales responsibility begin when it comes to sales enablement?
A great question. So, what we actually went through an exercise here. Marketing owns our brand, our market messaging, our content strategy and production, our entire digital presence, anything that falls under digital outreach, whether it's social media, your email outreach. We split the difference a little bit on our ABM execution, and I'll come back to that in a second. But anything that's event execution, campaign reporting, anything that relates to the brand through our partner efforts. But where we start to share is when we get into the nitty-gritty of like our ICP refinement, making sure we're aligned on our buyer personas, ensuring that it's, the lead quality and the handoff. So I might bring the lead into the pipeline and nurture it, but I don't want to hand something off to them that's going to waste their time, and ensuring that they're ready. One of the things that used to be exclusive to my department that AI tools have changed dramatically is, so I'm going to call it the sales content portion of the pipeline. Prior to AI tools, it was very difficult because my department owned so much of the message and knowing what was, with an FDA cleared product, knowing which claims were viable, which metrics were viable. A lot of things had to come through me, even from a design standpoint. It was kind of like, who's the person who's got an eye on things? And the AI tools have actually changed that workflow quite a bit. We just had an instance yesterday where a client had requested a bunch of materials to build their own deck to go to their internal buying committee and do their own pitch about us. So we're not in the room, and it was really rewarding to see several people from the sales team go, hey, I pulled these materials from the assets that you've enabled for us to go ahead and use AI and move forward building these narratives instead of coming to you and going, hey, can you put this together for us?
I want to drill down more on AI in a minute, because that's obviously the main topic here. But before we get into it, before AI entered the picture, what was the biggest friction point between marketing and sales? And I mean friction, not in the sense of tension or sort of arguments, but actually in terms of inefficiency.
The biggest inefficiency between marketing and sales actually also existed within our company, our innovation department, was access to information. When you have wonderful success stories, as most people in our space do. We started this by saying I'm human centric, right? You have these incredible stories about how people are changing each other's lives in healthcare. It's very difficult in an organization to figure out the best way to leverage those stories. And so what was happening was we had siloed certain workflows. Like I owned kind of some of the very like voice of customer, very humanistic stories. Our research department owned a lot of the like raw metrics that were coming out of the volume of research papers that have been published by our clients and support, that we've supported. And then the sales team was having to run back and forth and go, okay, well, hey, you have the videos and the voice of customer quotes and this, and the research department has these metrics. And that just was so frustrating because when you're trying, everybody always wants to know what the ROI is. Everybody wants to see in sales, the biggest success that you can have is being able to point to a client and say, see, they did this thing that you want to do, and help that prospective person into the narrative and see themselves in those footprints, if you will. And so to silo parts of the story across an organization was really hindering the ability to take the customer on the journey.
That's a not an uncommon problem. So you reference using AI to do that. That's one of the use cases, but explain a little bit about the role of AI in helping to address that problem of creating a better way for everybody to access the same common intelligence.
But, we've actually approached it in three ways. First is your standard generative AI tools where it's like, okay, we've created documents that can train a GEM or a GPT, things like that. We leaned heavily into NotebookLMs where we were aggregating. I have one for just all the videos and the transcripts or one for all of the research. And so now those salespeople don't have to go to a person and go right into the tool, have a conversation, get what they're looking for. The third thing that we identified is looking at those success stories and those metrics and how are we matching all of that to market signals so that the salesperson can continue to connect the dots without having to do it manually. Right now, it's funny, people refer to AI as the second industrial revolution. And I just have to laugh because we talk in internet terms, you Google something, what are we saying now that we're going to, like, what's the phrase for AI? But the salesperson would have to go to Google or anything like that and just start to mine. And so we've taken it as a multi-tiered approach and gone, okay, what were the core documents? Now, what are these libraries? And now how can we use this insight and feed it into an ABM machine and start to identify where those market fits are so that, as I mentioned before, we're taking somebody on the journey now.
So just break this down a bit because you referenced so go back to, you talked about a three-pronged approach.
Yeah, so the three-pronged approach that we've taken to breaking down the silos and enabling kind of a stronger AI infrastructure across our marketing and sales operations has been, first of all, the training in the generative AI and building core documents that are always going to be the right context for the sales team. Then taking that into a step two and putting those into libraries like a NotebookLM so that that information is consolidated and referenceable without having to switch between people or interrupt workflows or anything like that. And then after sitting down and identifying, okay, this is the context we've built, this is the libraries where we're gleaning all of these internal insights. Now we're taking that and we're building out a tool set that is going to help us compare what our successes have been against industry signals and insights so that it's not just, hey, this is somebody who would look like is interested in neonatal care. It's here's where we excel in enabling neonatal care and here's how it matches the industry insights and how we should approach that. So like I said, it went step one was context, step two was library and insights, and step three is now turning that into a tool set.
Got it. Okay, so let's take those one at a time and dive in to the details of the how. So talk about training. So you're training what? The LLMs? Are you training? What are you training?
We're making it rain training over here. We're training people. We're training LLMs. What aren't we training is really the question.
Well, actually, let's split that out because they're both important but different. So talk about the training the LLMs because that's something that I'll tell you why I asked after you've answered. But have you approached training the LLMs?
It's the context that I mentioned. When we're working on breaking down the silos, it's finding all of the right information and then having that conversation with the LLM, like chain of thought training, specifically some few shot prompting, but particularly chain of thought to go through, like, this is the thing that we're interested in. This is how we're trying to get there. Here's the information that you need to be able to successfully help us get to that end point.
But we'll break it down a bit so Graham. But that means what? Feeding documents into Claude or feeding documents into ChatGPT, setting up stores. How is that organized?
Two ways. One is, yes, we're looking at the GEM and GPT side of things, built a bunch of documents that are stored in our digital asset manager that anybody in the company can reference. But we also have a team that is slowly working to actually build that into the core language of some bots and things like that, so that we're trying to remove the friction of having to go get the document. And yes, documents can live in a project or they can, the AI right now allows you to keep those documents there. But then there's a certain amount of who's responsible for the versioning, which versions are out there. You run into that version friction, right? So right now we're in the early stages where the documents are there. We're having people build their projects. We're actually experimenting with all three, ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini across the organization because of the different needs with being in tech, right? And seeing how certain things work and how certain things fit. So we have that document library.
So are you connecting that? So you've put these in a library. What is it, like a Google Drive or a...
They're currently, so the documents themselves are currently stored in a digital asset manager. So yeah, Google Drive, one of the things we've learned is when you've got different teams across the company who have different drives for what their team supports, when you're looking at, overall company documentation, it's easy. We have a company dashboard, but that company dashboard just goes out to a folder that that one space in the digital asset manager is controlling all the versions for everybody instead of having to worry about which part of Google Drive did this end up in. So we've got that layer of version control and also making sure that everybody has the right access from a permission standpoint.
Got it. Okay. And so if you're a salesperson, you're not asking them to go into the digital asset manager. They're saying, if you're using Claude, we'll get on to how you train them, but if you're using Claude, we've connected Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini to that digital asset manager. So you ask the question, it'll go find the right assets and it'll get you what you'll get back will basically leverage the digital asset manager.
So that's the part B. We're in the A phase right now where they do have to manually go to the digital asset manager. There's some documents that are in Drive, and of course, Drive connects to all of these different tools. But we have the team right now who's actually building out a repository and making sure all the right markdown files and all of those kinds of things to especially make sure we're not eating up all kinds of tokens and stuff like that. We're looking at streamlining that data. Yeah. So that's why we've taken this two-pronged approach and just said, right now, everybody, hey, here's the documents that you need to be successful. And then we have some really brilliant minds working behind the scenes in our tech department, and they're identifying what are the ways we can streamline those documents and maintain that version control and get everything connected.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. So we've been on a similar journey with the agency, and we call it the HLP brain, which is kind of, it's a sort of catch-all for a lot of different things. But where we started was to answer the question, how can we AI enable health tech marketing expertise? And so what we did was we created vector stores, which is a way of saving information so the LLMs can crunch on it more easily. And we curated this. So we found that there has to be a taxonomy to it and how you actually set it up. And what we found is that for about 6 months, we would use it to create content, and then we would benchmark it against, well, if we just use Claude or ChatGPT to do this, or Gemini, could it just create the content without accessing it? And what we found is that what we were doing by pointing the LLM at the vector stores, we were getting much better content. It was much more expert. And we thought, well, this is interesting. And then what happened was the new models came out. Both ChatGPT and Claude launched new models in February. And what we found is that the benchmark went from a 50% better to about 10% better. So we said, well, we know where this is going. And so the other thing that we found was that when we showed people, I showed a bunch of marketing folks this and said, what do you think? They all said, well, this is great, but what I'm more interested in is actually doing stuff than having it stored somewhere. How do I use this thing? And so what we've actually pivoted over to is building out a workflow platform we call the Orchestrator. And we're still using the vector store. So it's still, you still get some advantage. But the most important use of the vector stores is using it as a secure way to save client documents so that we can crunch on them with a real assurance that it's not training the LLMs and that other people can't access it and you're not exposing proprietary information to it. Hey, Adam here. Quick word from Health Launchpad, the team behind this show. What Jennifer just described, the journey from scattered content to an AI-enabled sales machine, is the kind of transformation that we're helping companies do through our AI enablement solution. This is designed to help marketing teams get on the front foot with AI. And The problem that I think a lot of marketing teams are dealing with is where to start, how to bring your team along, and how to build something that actually sticks. And this is where we come in. We have a 3-step AI enablement program that starts with a workshop to help you identify where you can make the biggest impact. And then we help you build out a full AI empowerment plan. And that includes training and helping you implement custom GPTs. We also will show you and teach you how to build the kind of workflow tools that we're building for ourselves. It's pretty cool. Talk about training the people. So what's been the journey there?
So this has been the most rewarding part of the AI experience at our company. Our CEO has recently adopted that we're an AI forward space. I'm going to call it an inevitability, but that sounds like it's looming. And for many instances it is, because honestly, it is daunting to be constantly dealing with a technology that, just like you said, is changing all the time, right? So there's always that sense. And so we're taking the approach of how do we help people feel comfortable and empowered to be successful utilizing what makes them an expert at what they do. And so in my role as the marketer and looking at that sales enablement, for example, I talked about breaking down that friction, giving people documents, giving people libraries. But then what we've done is we've scheduled calls and said, now let's look at how you can actually use this in your everyday. And we sit down and we talk about what are ways we can improve your documents? What are ways we can improve your pitch or your narrative? And it just shown very simple things. We saw on a call, I thought I was going to be talking to people about how to generate, their own infographics as part of narratives, and found out that some of the sales team at the time didn't know that Gemini had updated its in Google Docs features to do essentially like markdown updates. Like it would, redline and you'd hit accept and that takes care of it for you. And so it was reducing what they call the copy paste tax. And so you have such a simple use case as that, but then we have half the company as software engineers and technical support, and they're over in GitHub utilizing Claude and Copilot, and they're literally doing those beautiful interfaces. Somebody built the most beautiful interfaces. So we've got a top-down and a bottom-up approach in that from the bottom up, we're just sitting there going, what are the use cases you can use every day, right? What are the small things that you can do to chisel away? From the top down, as I mentioned, our CEO is driving us into this AI forward space. We have initiated a company-wide AI training program that's in 3 phases. And phase 1 is quite literally, what's your role in the AI relationship and talking about the human in the loop? What is risk and what isn't risk in an AI space? So everyone in the company had to do this 10 series training module. The last part was about prompting, and everybody had to basically go through and create prompts, demonstrate the differences in the prompts, that kind of a thing. Then levels 2 and 3 of this training starts to diverge, because when you're looking at what we do over here in the marketing sales side, I'm somebody who likes to be creative and will eventually code things and do more like that. But I want them to be able to just feel, we're trying to fly the plane, put the gas in the tank or whatever it is. Whereas on the engineering side of the company, they're looking at a very different use case when we're looking at, the code and emphasis on things and, proprietary software engineering and that kind of thing. So the way the training is set up is that the third level of this training is really going to be focused a lot more on the code and how AI tools interact with that side of things. And then the middle of that is the tier 2 is basically for anybody in the company who's going someone like me who's beyond your generative, I'm just going to hop in here and prompt some, and who is interested in building things and interested in efficiency and workflows and operations. Yesterday I'm so excited to build skills for workflows in Claude, but that's kind of the tier 2. So we've taken this approach that leadership is saying we've got to break this into modules, and everybody's got to understand the basics, and then determined by your role in the company, how are we most efficiently meeting your need and meeting you where you're at. And so, like I said, I have been on multiple calls with the sales team now where we work together, where I have them bring up projects. We go through what are ways that they can work more efficiently. And it's been it's honestly been pretty incredible. We've seen people change how we respond to RFPs. I've seen changes in how we're creating the client-facing story. I'm seeing successes and metrics that we're really proud of as a company that have been buried come to the spotlight simply because somebody said, hey, I have this document that's got a bunch of metrics. Here's what I'm trying to do. And then they walk it through, they have those conversations, build these graphics, build these narratives. And I'm like, well, holy crap, guys, you guys are doing great. So it's an open environment for conversation on both sides.
I was thinking as you were saying that I haven't done this for a while, but it's kind of before generative AI, the thing that we used to get involved with a lot was training salespeople on how to get the benefit out of LinkedIn. And it seems like it's a topic no one's remotely interested in anymore. But what I would find is that if you had 10 salespeople in the room, you'd have 2 who are like super users, right? Who would teach me stuff. It's like, it'd be fantastic. And then you'd have like probably 4 or 5 who are like really into it and enjoying it. And maybe they would do 20 or 30% of what we train them how to do, which is like, honestly, that's probably better than nothing. And then there was the other third that was like, yeah, not doing this. And so I'm kind of curious. Is like, it sounds like from what you're saying that this is being embraced in a much more enthusiastic way. And in fact, that what you're saying is that some of the salespeople are saying, look, this is where I'm actually doing. Let me show you some stuff that I'm doing with it. We should get everybody else doing the same thing.
Yeah, I would say enthusiasm isn't the right word. What I would say is the biggest success we're having is in helping everyone identify how it serves them. Because that's the thing at the end of the day is AI is there to serve you as a tool. It's not there, there's the saying in the industry, AI is not here to take your job. It's the people who know how to use AI are here to take your job, right? And that's the conversation we've had with people is we believe you're smart. We believe you were hired for a reason. So let's enable you to be your own kind of leader in whatever part of the industry that you're in. And so from that sales enablement standpoint, enablement from an AI training standpoint meant going, you're the salesperson. What do we need to do to help you be successful utilizing this tool? Is it show you in the Google Doc, hey, here's how you can click the things? Is it walk you through how to add context to something? Is it building projects? Is it giving you GPTs and gems? And in some ways, one of the things that we even had to do was remind other people in the company, hey, because you're on the software and tech side of things, you're watching this rate of change going, yeah, it's always going to be daunting, but you're kind of like a crazy surfer looking at a giant wave going, I'm going to ride that thing out. Whereas the salespeople are going, I am over here with my floaties. Like, please don't put me in that wave, right? They're just hanging out on the beach. And so we've had to really make sure we're also managing how internal conversation around the tool stack exists. It's really scary if you're training somebody and then you start every conversation going, by the way, this is going to change tomorrow. Like nobody wants to hear that. So we just look at like, what are the small wins and how do those add up to big wins and it's really rewarding watching people go, once they catch on to those small things, all of a sudden they're curious now and they're going, well, what else can I do with this?
When we chatted at the Sway Health Live conference, you mentioned something about using Gamma, which is, I guess, a presentation software, and ChatGPT to create a slide workflow. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we've really leaned into this. The AI training I mentioned is we built all the slides in that exact workflow. The workflow is this. Gamma is magnificent at taking your text, whether it's free thinking or organized, take your pick, or literal. You can actually tell Gamma to take it word for word, and organizing into very compelling layouts and how it can visually tell that story. That's wonderful. Gamma can generate all kinds of different images. It's hooked up to all kinds of different models. Here's the catch. Even, we're utilizing a pro subscription, you only get so many credits. And what we started to understand was very quickly, Gamma is eating up a lot of credits from in the image generation sphere.
Yep.
And it also has the potential to eat a certain number of credits every time you're generating new slides. So we took a step back and built out an approach where whoever is building the deck is having a conversation with ChatGPT or Gemini about what needs to go into the deck. Here are all of the facts. Here's the metrics. Here's the real things I'm trying to get across. Here's my audience, really working with people to have an audience first approach, even internally when you're having that, if you don't have the audience in mind to start, and that sounds like such a simple thing, but oftentimes anywhere in the sales pipeline, you're going, I heard they have this problem and I really want them to understand we have a fit for them. But if they're in the IT sphere and you're coming at them talking about alarm management from a clinical side, you're not necessarily going to resonate, right? So you want to make sure that you're telling the right story to the right person and how that aligns. And so we've worked with across different team members to help have, literally, how do you have a conversation and what are the biggest bullet points you need to outline with that ChatGPT? Then turn around and ask for an output that is the slide outline. So then that slide outline gets fed into Gamma. Gamma generates all the slides minus the images. It'll put image placeholders. Then we've taken it and said, we go back to ChatGPT or Gemini and go, here's the slide. Here's the size of the image I want. Here's the style. Go. And we actually built a style guide for image prompting. It's a little 2-pager that anybody in the company can use that has different suggestions and ways to get to the images they want. And what that did for us is also save us that amount of credits in Gamma. And so you could have a longer conversation, refine the images to be what you wanted, and save yourself.
So sounds like there's a lot of momentum. Talk about safeguards, AI brand guidelines, making sure that the salespeople are not just generating something and sending it out without checking it. That would never happen, obviously, but it might. How do you put safeguards in place so that, I'm trying to think about your plane analogy, but anyway, let's skip that. I'll leave you to come up with an analogy.
I have a really good example for you. We're an FDA cleared product, and in the FDA's clearance, we redisplay in 25 milliseconds. That's a blink of an eye, but to the FDA, that's not real time. That is close to real time, near real time, insert adjective real time. AI loves to call everything real time. And so...
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Oh my gosh. That was our very first hurdle to conquer when we started to get everybody really on board with having these conversations with AI and how to better draft their documents, was we actually ran into like an internal compliance roadblock where it was like, guys, we don't say we're real time. We say we're near real time, that 25 milliseconds in the blink of an eye, streaming. We have a list right here for you. And so the answer was, create those context documents. So we have a brand guide for AI that specifically goes over what words we do and don't want it to use. We give it the colors, we give it the fonts, we give it how we use our disclaimers on certain things. And that's all consolidated into one document that if they just put it in the project, if they have one project that they're using for their, continued conversations about something, it now lives there. And that AI gets trained on that, like, oh no, I can't use this. And that was resolved very quickly. So part one was giving them the materials to just give it to the AI, to slap the AI's hand, so to speak. But the second thing was we have a multi-stage approval process across different teams. So each team has essentially a second set of eyes within their team, whether it's some sort of manager, leader, operations person. It's not necessarily the top of the chain, like in our sales pipeline. The first person who gets eyeballs and everything is our director of sales operations. And so it comes through a flow through her. We get a quick sign off from the head of sales and then off to compliance. It goes. Compliance just verifies that it's not meeting any, we're not making any foreign claims. But now 2-3 years ago, got folded into part of that compliance process. So it sounds like a lot to have a 2 to 3 stage approvals. We can get it done very quickly. But what's also happened is we've become much more collaborative, where now people will reach out and go, hey, it's wording it this, the AI is wording it this way. I don't know how to change this. I'm telling it to change this and I'm running into a hurdle. What can I do? And by having this pipeline, there's different people who have different they're looking for different things that can help. So people will come to me and say, I don't know why it's still wording it this way, or I don't know why this graphic looks like this. They'll go to the sales operations person and say, I think it's, phrasing this claim this way. Do we have something else in the RFP bank that I can maybe give to the AI to help me?
So you're embedding guidelines and guardrails into the workflow so that anybody using your systems should access that, should be automatic. And then there's a continuous improvement of army of the willing here saying, hey, I need help doing X, Y. Can you add this guardrail as well? So it's sort of improving it as well as you go.
Yeah. And believe it or not, it sounds like a lot in terms of guardrails. It sounds like a lot in terms of the people. But when we had a process where everything, like if somebody needed something, we used to have a process, and this is true of a lot of companies, where somebody puts in a request, you build a form, you build a document, whatever it may be, you kick it back, they give their feedback, and you go back and forth. The AI tools have made it so, again, give the experts the tools in their hands. The salespeople know their job. They know our product. They know their relationship to that prospect or that existing client better than a lot of other people in the company, because they're the one who's constantly having a conversation. So by giving them these AI tools and then this process to step through, they own so much more of the narrative than they ever have before. And then they have people who are there to help support and make sure that it's just it's as polished as it could be before it goes out the door, without having to, they don't have to sit and wait on somebody to give them a permission, so to speak.
So this journey's been, how long have you been doing this?
Let's see, what is it? It's June, 7 months.
7 months. Oh, okay. Yeah, not that long. It's remarkable. So, here you are 7 months into it. How is it changing the working relationship between marketing and sales?
We are so much more aligned because, again, it's mutual respect now. We had someone in the mix and they chose to leave the organization. It had nothing to do with these circumstances. They got an amazing opportunity. But that individual really liked to own a lot of the story and the narrative. And when they left, it actually presented an opportunity for us to step back and go, okay, before we say who owns the narrative now, like it now goes, you wear the crown. Like, we didn't want to take that approach. We wanted to say, hey, there's all these AI tools and we have all these different things that this company is 14 years old. We have a wonderful repository of information and science to support the true narrative. What can we do to really make this easier on everybody? And that was, ease and efficiency. When you're looking at salespeople, at the end of the day, they want to close the sale. And so anything that you can do to help a salesperson make that journey simpler and make the story that they're trying to communicate to their client more valuable is going to be a win, and it's going to improve that relationship. And so now I work very closely with our executive vice president of business development and our director of sales operations, and we identify, okay, what is going to be the strategy in both directions of how, what do I need to know from the sales side that should inform my marketing decisions, and what do they need to know I'm doing that helps support them and helps drive their successes.
Last question for you. You talk to a lot of people in the community, a lot of people. What are some of the common things that you see your peers struggling with or getting wrong? And what would be the sort of one piece of advice you'd give to anybody listening to this?
The thing I think everybody's getting wrong is that everyone's further than they are. Let me think about how to word that differently. When I was at the Sway conference, they have these wonderful sessions called On Conferences where everybody gets together and kind of discusses something. And we had gotten into a room and we were talking about agents, and there were people talking about agentic deployment. And I actually raised my hand and said, can I ask a question? And the question was, who's just started and who's building agents? And it was like 4 hands out of say 60 people in the room, 4 hands went up with I just turned on Gemini today. And then you have 7 or 8 hands on the other side of the room, across the room for I built an agent and it's, got 28 workflows. There are 60 people in the room though. So you're looking at 50 people who are considering themselves smack in the middle. And I think what's inhibiting us in our success utilizing these tools is looking at the mountain and forgetting that we just have to take it one step. We're hiking a path. We're not trying to disassemble the mountain. And so I think that that's the biggest misconception. And so fixing that misconception, the advice is take it that one step at a time. You don't have to build an entire AI ecosystem overnight. You don't have to stop what you're doing and go, this is going to take my job tomorrow. It starts somewhere and build and just take it a step at a time. Talk to your peers. We've changed how we work together at this company. We've changed our ability to communicate both internally and externally. We're identifying so much more information and metrics and data across, like I said, 14 years of history than we ever have before, because we're taking it one step at a time.
Jennifer, I think that is a great place to bring this to a close. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And I think that anyone wondering about how they can use AI to improve sales enablement and develop an approach to it, I think we'll get a lot out of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed talking with Jennifer, and I just think what she's built is truly impressive and done in such a short time frame. Let me leave you with 5 key takeaways. Number 1, the technology is arguably the easy part. Jennifer's most important perspective here is that AI adoption is fundamentally a change management challenge. The question isn't which tools to use, it's how to help people feel empowered rather than threatened by AI, and how you meet them where they are. So start with small wins that make their specific job easier, and then the curiosity follows naturally. Number 2, break down the silos before you build the tools. The biggest friction point in Jennifer's organization wasn't a tech problem. It was that valuable content, metrics, and customer stories lived in different departments and no one could access them efficiently. Her 3-pronged approach, which is context documents, consolidated libraries like NotebookLM, and then a tool set that matches insights to market signals, only work because they tackle the silo problems first. 3, give the experts the tools. One of the most powerful shifts Jennifer described was salespeople owning their own narratives. They're able to build decks, pulling assets, and draft RFP responses without having to wait on marketing or anybody else to get moving fast. So when you combine AI tools with good guardrails, you multiply the team without adding headcount. Takeaway 4, guardrails aren't a drag on speed. They're what makes the speed safe. For Jennifer's team, FDA compliance language was the first real friction point. Their solution, a brand guide for AI that specifies exact approved language, disclaimers, colors, and fonts, feeds directly into every project. And this means that the AI is trained to get it right from the start. Now you pair that with a lightweight multi-stage approval flow, and you can move fast without exposing the company. Takeaway 5, don't let the mountains stop you from making the first step. Jennifer closed with something that's really stayed with me. And so she was talking about how in a room at the Sway conference, 60 health tech marketers were asked about where they were on their AI journey. 4 just started, 8 were out there building agents. The vast majority was somewhere in the middle, and they were somewhat frozen by how much there was to learn and what it was going to take to get started. Her advice, you don't have to build an AI ecosystem overnight. Start somewhere, build in, and take one step at a time. If you want to learn more about Jennifer and Medical Informatics Corp, particularly their SickBay Clinical Platform, we'll have links in the show notes to Jennifer's LinkedIn and Medical Informatics Corp's website. And if today's episode sparked ideas about how AI enabling your marketing and sales operation can really make an impact, check out our AI enablement services. There's a link down below. Thanks for listening. And if you found this valuable, please leave us a review. Share this episode with a colleague, and then follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you on the next episode.